Hello, people. Thank you for joining and participating. Uh, um, well, what to say about Aurora Coworking? This was a dream that came true, and it was a very frustrating dream in many in many cases. And suddenly, is becoming kind of a fantastic source of joy and community building. So I can tell you a bit about the story if you care about it. Would that be okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. Um, this was like 6 or 7 years ago. I returned to Slovenia from New York City. So my time before New York was IT and technology. I was always an IT entrepreneur. After New York, it happened that I went to a co-working space in Vienna, in Austria, and I experienced for first time kind of a love relationship with the idea of co-working. From that moment on, I said, "Oh my God, this is what I have to be doing for the rest of my life." And the problem is that I live in a very small town in rural Slovenia, northeast of Slovenia, very close to the border with Hungary and Austria, and it was like impossible dream. Amazingly, I met in Vienna, in the same co-working space, a Slovenian person that was going to become an employee of one bank. And some months later, that bank was asking what to do with some of the spaces that we have empty, because the crisis of the 2008 pushed them to close some of their business centers. And they talked to me, and they made me compete for having a space here in this town called Murska Sobota, and we won. This year, we are crossing the 5th year as a co-working space, right? We have this free rent. We cover the expenses of electricity, internet, and some common expenses in the building where we are. And well, that's how it began. I don't know if you have some questions so far.
Yeah, I mean, just for everyone to understand better, why is a co-working space giving value to Murska Sobota? What's the value that people get from being at Aurora?
Yeah, so at first, do you remember I was saying that sometimes it's very frustrating?
Yeah.
So it is very frustrating because you start with a wish of doing something, or you start with some assumptions, and then the market proves you completely wrong. So initially, what we wanted to do is to identify entrepreneurs in the region. And when we were thinking entrepreneurs, we had an idea of small teams, maybe some tech companies, maybe some municipalities, God knows what, that would like to participate and cooperate with us. The truth is that that never happened. So our initial assumption of looking for entrepreneurs was wrong. And the reason that we found is that in this region, as I said, is kind of a rural area, no one identifies with the word entrepreneur. So we had to change completely our point of view. We even discovered that looking for entrepreneurs in the region was an unfair practice. And basically, what we started doing is inviting persons that identify themselves as freelancers. And the freelancers started responding because they found in our place that what they needed was a different space, different than home, where to work, and a community center where they could connect with other people with similar circumstances. And that has been so far a very successful let's say, approach.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask one more question and then open the floor to questions from the audience. You interact with lots of entrepreneurs in Murska Sobota and outside as well. what would you say are some of the biggest problems that they face today?
So, I had the opportunity of making a survey the beginning of this year, not only in Murska Sobota and in Slovenia, but in a few other countries as well, where I had some kind of role. And it's almost 100% of the people that I talk to are telling me that what they need is a space where they can relate with others and be safe to speak. Mm-hmm. That was completely surprising to me, because when I even asked them, do you need a space where to learn about how to make more money? Do you need a space where to get training courses or learn from successful cases? They said, you know what? That exists everywhere. We can find all that kind of information even on internet. So no, we need a space where to relate with other people. And just a few days ago, talking with the team members here in Aurora Coworking, they said that this is what they care the most. I'm preparing my plan for the next year, for the 2020, and I was thinking to create some new formats and some new programs, and they just don't care about it. They prefer to have to keep the space as a peaceful location where they can stay out of the home, focus on their work, and also relate and talk with others.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me see if we have any questions in the room at the moment. If not, I've got a couple more up my sleeve. Okay. Let me ask you one more question. As the audiences, they like to get warmed up, and it takes a while for people to come up with the first question. But I mentioned to you when we were talking that I also want to use this opportunity to ask you to provide some advice in general to our entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And my first question in that regard is about failure, which you talked about quite a lot. What would you recommend to entrepreneurs when it comes to dealing with failure?
Yeah. Can I make a question to the audience,
good idea. Please do.
So the question is
for you. Go give the question, and then I might have to translate for some people.
Okay, perfect. So the question is, what is your definition for failure in the context of business and entrepreneurship?
Okay. Դուք հարց չեք տալիս, հիմա ձեզ են հարց տալիս։ Ձեր կարծիքով, ձեր ձևակերպումով, ինչպես եք դուք ձախողում հասկացումը ձևակերպում կամ սահմանում բիզնեսի տեսանկյունից, ձեր ներկայացան տեսանկյունից։ Պատասխաններ։ Մի վարքան մոտեցեք։ We're going to bring the telephone close to them so you can hear what they say. Անգլերեն եք ասում, հայերեն, լավ։ Gohar. So Gohar from the audience says that failure means when you have an objective and you don't get to that objective, and you also fail to make revenue.
Okay, so I have a second question to follow this up. Do you expect some kind of failure to happen?
Երկրորդ հարցը, որպես շարունակություն, ակնկալում եք արդյոք, որ ինչ որ ձախողումներ լինելու է։ Ովքեր որ ակնկալում են ձեր կբարձրացնեն որպես դեպք։ So these many people expect failure to happen.
Yeah. So and they are exactly right. So what is going to happen is that failure is inevitable. So they are going to experience in one way or another that they couldn't achieve their goals or their expectations were not met. They are going to see that their assumptions were wrong, and they will have to constantly adapt. So if you ask me what is failure, right? Failure is what happens when you are progressing. It's part of the process of progress.
Very important. Let me interrupt you for a second and translate this into Armenian, because there are a couple of people in the audience who are not as fluent in English. I think this is a very important little thought. E por ca arăsântat, înțeles cum n-ai scălinel, So one interpretation of that is failure is a possible failure is an opportunity.
Yeah, it is always an opportunity, and actually, if you connect the idea of failure and the idea and your concept of fear, what you are going to find out is that often we fail when we are afraid of something. So to give you one example, if I'm the manager and I'm afraid of, and I'm a perfectionist, okay? It's normal, this perfectionism is normally because I'm afraid of showing that my work is not perfect, it's not good enough. So I wouldn't like my work to reflect me as someone bad. So it's a fear of being not good enough, okay? But that perfectionism that looks like a good thing, right, can be the reason why the company is not launching the product to the market, for saying something. So when we identify that we failed, I always recommend try to find the reason why you failed, but not only in the circumstances, but what is your responsibility, how your fear modified or affected your capacity for making decisions, what your fear is hiding from you, right? We normally hide on fear. If I'm a perfectionist, I feel great because the perfectionists look like I'm good. I know what quality is, right? But in the back of that perfectionism is very much of I don't want to be associated with negative things or not good enough things because I don't want to be bad. I don't want to be mediocre. That's an insecurity that I have, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does. Thank you very much. George Carson, next question. We have a question at the back. I think you know Hamo. You've met him before, no?
Yes, I do. It's a guy that I like very much.
Hello.
Oh, looking good.
Thank you. Well, about the co-working space, you know how many and which types of co-working spaces you know, how it works. Do we have some models there, or it is one?
You are talking about how many co-working spaces exist here around?
No, how many types of co-working spaces exist?
Okay. So I don't know how many types. I could not tell you exactly, but I can tell you some ideas, okay, of the co-workings that I visited. There are some co-working spaces that are specialized. For example, for architects or for graphic designers or for scientists or for IT people, okay? So they attract a specific group of professionals and they offer services that are connected with those professions. So that's one type that I know. Then there are co-working spaces that even have that offer the possibility of having space where to sleep. So they are calling it co-living. So those are spaces where you have office space and infrastructure, but you also have rooms and common areas for people that would like to stay in one place. Those kind of locations are normally connected with technology, so that people that work a lot and they prefer to work intensively for a few years and get a lot of money, for example. So those places are like perfect. a lot of co-working spaces are having now kind of a preference, for example, for social impact ventures. Some others are focusing on sustainability, right? And for example, in the case of Aurora Coworking, we are not specialized on any specific topic. What we found, so the specialization is kind of finding us, right? And we are basically specializing in freelancers. So that's the kind of persons that like to come here. And in terms of partnerships, we partner with many different organizations. Some of them can be municipalities, some of them are NGOs or social enterprises from different countries. Yeah, that's what I know.
Okay, thank you. Pajor Tarsa, there's a question at the back. Just a second, we'll get the phone over there. Mane has a question.
You mentioned that the people wanted a place that they could meet others, not necessarily things that they could learn. I'm wondering when you created this space so that people could come together, what were some of the other things that were necessary in order for people to feel valued or fulfilled or feel like they could have these collaborations?
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question. There's a term that I like very much that is organizational culture. When you enter to a store, a very expensive store of clothes, right? You enter, you feel like a bit uncomfortable. At least I do, because I never dress good. And when you enter to those kind of stores, the reason why you're feeling uncomfortable is because they created a culture that speaks, you know, without words. It's a culture that says, this is a space for elegance, for example. So we had to take care that when the persons enter to our co-working space, they would feel comfortable, they would feel at home. So we don't have any expensive furniture, we don't have any, so you can see it's very homemade. The furniture that we have is from IKEA, so it's not expensive. And to build it, we needed the support of some of the members. And the whole design of the experience is connected with cooperation. So, for example, in this part of Slovenia, there are many different religions. Okay, so the people subscribe or profess different religions. So we asked every different kind of religion to come and to bless our space using their own different rituals. We even had persons that are a bit more than witches coming to make blessings in their own way. And that started giving kind of atmosphere of openness and of inclusion. And basically, as the manager of the co-working space, that's my responsibility. So I have to take care that the people that comes here feel at home, right? But it's organizational culture.
Okay, thank you.
I would love, if you have more, if you would like more clarification from my answer, please feel free to ask again.
Okay. Urish Harser, other questions? One question here. Uzmek mototek state Anglernik hasta hayır. Angler mototek anındela exist. Question coming up. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Naira. Thank you for what you are doing. I have such kind of question. If I'm not mistaken, you said that Aurora Coworking space have been existed for 5 years. And I'm wondering, is there any success stories? How many of your members have been succeeded in their business due to our co-working space? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So the purpose of this co-working space is not to monitor or support the business development of our members. So we don't measure what is happening with their business. But what happens is that our members normally stay in our co-working space for very long periods of time, and we can see, because we talk with them, how it's going. And there's no member that I know that went bankrupt or closed their business. So all of them used our space as a platform. Some of them are in the same situation than when they started. So they have a business, they can sustain themselves and their families, and they stayed there. And some of them moved out because, for example, they needed more space, or because their business were more, they were growing, right? A few persons went out of our co-working space because they didn't manage to make their startup to succeed, and they got a job and they moved out. But those are the minority of the cases.
Okay. The next question comes from me. Many of the people you work with are freelancers, entrepreneurs. In Armenia as well, I mean, it's a growing culture. And in this room as well, many people, I'm sure, have full-time jobs, but they're also going to the School of Social Entrepreneurs on the side, and they're thinking of starting their own business. It becomes very consuming having your own business. It takes up a lot of your time. Based on the people you've worked with and your own experience, what advice do you have for more balance in people's lives when they start their own business?
Well, there's one thing that is essential, and is how you manage your energy. So that sounds a bit spiritual, but actually it's not. Okay, when I talk about energy, it's about how tired you feel. Okay, so may I make you a question, guys? What do you do when you are tired?
Let me just translate that as well. One person says, I work more.
Okay.
Hurish, I go to teach. You go to teach? To the theater. One person goes to the theater. Come up with new ideas. Change so if it's intellectual work that makes us tired, we go for physical activity to refresh ourselves.
Yep.
Drink a cup of coffee. That's my favorite one.
So
learning
you see,
helps. Yeah.
You see that the majority of the persons that are participating today are engaging in intellectual work as entertainment.
Yeah.
Right. So the majority of you think that resting is doing something with your mind. Right. So even when you go to the theater, or even if you turn on the TV and watch some series or whatever, what you are doing is you're engaging in mental work. You're focusing your attention in something different. So instead of being worried about whatever that happened today, you decide to focus your attention somewhere else, like watching TV, or learning something, or going to YouTube and watching some videos, whatever, that is still intellectual work. So when you engage in those kind of ways of entertainment, how do you sleep after? How do you feel your sleep is?
After physical activity, they sleep well. After more mental activity, no, not really.
Exactly. So, but we have only one person that talked about the physical activity.
Yes, only one person talked about it.
Right? So that person is the only person among what we could hear or perceive that understands that there is a difference between spending your mental energy and spending your physical energy. When you spend mental energy, you get exhausted, you lose your body energy, That's why here in Slovenia, they say when they are tired in the morning, I need a bit of sugar.
Yeah.
And it is just, I mean, our brain spends a lot of energy, but our body, right, our muscles are not tired. Therefore, when we want to go to sleep, we have problems to sleep, or the quality of our sleep is not good enough because our mind is still active. A lot of people have problems of going to sleep because their minds are thinking more even when they are calm before going to sleep. So to me, when I deliver training courses about entrepreneurship, one of the first things that I request every single body is to change the way they entertain themselves. And entertaining yourself should not be to continue getting tired mentally, but it should be to get tired physically. When you are tired physically, you return home after going to ride a bicycle or whatever, and you can sleep well. And that changes everything. So that's step number one. So learning to manage your energy, right? So physical energy and mental energy. You want to sleep, get tired physically. So yeah, you got the point. But the other thing is also to realize that even if you make everything right, your venture, your entrepreneurial activities are going to disappoint you. So that means that you need to be aware that failure in one or another form is going to be present. Entrepreneurship is a decision, right? It's a decision of living your life as you want, of exploring, of learning, of breaking the limits. And those limits are the limits that you create for yourself. So it's extremely hard and tiring and disappointing in many cases. But if your attitude is a proactive and positive attitude, if you understand why you decided to become an entrepreneur, an independent person, then when the problems come or when the challenges hit, you are not going to feel so drained of energy. You're going to be positive. You're going to realize that you need to make action, or you're going to define that you need to stop, pause, and rest. So that's something that I would tell to every entrepreneur.
Okay, thank you. Next question. George Hartson. There's a question here. Ararat. Ararat has a question. Okay, the question is in Armenian. We'll translate. Okay. So as a social entrepreneur, what would you recommend doing first? Being more visible and then using that visibility to have more impact, or having more impact first, doing more work first, and then using that impact sort of to gain visibility? What would you recommend is a better approach? Sort of starting in more secret mode, stealth mode, and then showing yourself later on, or trying to be open and visible from the very beginning?
I think that the best thing to communicate out of any kind of entrepreneurial activity is a successful business model. So if you manage to find a business model that works, that is something that needs to be communicated strongly. And many times we make the mistake of using social media to communicate what we are doing. And we believe that this social media is going to help us bring more business, or and that visibility is going to help us in some way. And in many cases, we find out that the time that we invest in social media and publishing information is not necessarily supporting our business. It is very easy for the public, right? So your potential customers, to misunderstand what you are trying to do. So I would say that the number one focus of any kind of venture should be to try to develop your business model first. But everything will depend on which kind of impact you want to do. In some cases, you will not want even anyone to know what is the social impact that you're trying to achieve. But in that question, I also find something that makes me a bit nervous, and it is: are you trying to do a social enterprise or a social venture just because of impact, or do you expect that that organization will pay your bills?
Let me just translate that question. Դուք հետաքրքրված սոցիալական ձեռնարկատիրությամբ զուտ, որի սոցիալական խնդիր լուծեք, թե նաև ակնկալում եք, որ դա կարողանա ձեզ համար եկամուտի աղբյուր լինել եւ ձեր դասը երկուսը. Both.
Yeah. So I would, if you have a lot of money to spend, you can definitely start without focusing much on the business model and try, right, until you find the right business model. If you don't have money to start right now, I would not recommend you to start your activities if you don't have a business model.
And when it comes to the question of communicating first or later, your recommendation is get the right business model first and then communicate accordingly, yeah?
Yes, because then everybody will recognize that what you are trying to do is successful.
Yeah.
Right? So then they get inspired and they will ask themselves if they can participate of that success story. Okay. And in my case, right, I did exactly the opposite of what I'm recommending.
Okay.
So I started having some money on my savings account. I spent it all in a few years trying to find the business model, and that didn't communicate well. That bought me some kind of recognition as a social entrepreneur that is trying to do something, true. But it was hard to get to cooperate with some organizations. It was hard to explain what am I trying to do, etc., etc. But with a business model, everything is easier.
Okay. Ամենակարևորը սկզբից ճիշտ բիզնես մոդելը գտնելն է, որի հիման վրա արդեն կարող եք հետո. If the question, modifying the question a little bit and putting it very briefly, is it right to try to be in the center of attention or not?
It depends as well. There are persons that are very charismatic and that their natural condition attracts other people. And in that case, I would say, why not? That's a strength. But when I see people that tries to be present because that they think that's a condition for them to achieve success, I find that they are not being authentic. So that lack of authenticity actually plays against them. So I would not think that being public is a condition, or being very visible is a condition for achieving success. A business model is, and an authentic personality as well. So if we cannot, we humans, we are amazing to discover who is authentic and who is not. So we are not going to buy anything from anyone that feels as insecure or false or having an agenda on the back. And social media is not the perfect way of communicating. Just try to make a video and publish it, and you will see which kind of videos are the ones that attract and which are not. It's very difficult to transfer human emotions through video if you are not an expert, and if the actor or the person that is speaking is not very authentic. So be careful with that, right? So secret agendas are never working in favor of any kind of entrepreneurial activity.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Okay, my next question to you then is, as an entrepreneur, what has been your biggest challenge so far, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge is finding a business model that works, because we social entrepreneurs, we care more about the impact than making money, and that's why we end up burning out. So trying to understand what is the real value of what we are offering is tremendously difficult, right? Social entrepreneurs, in many cases, are very perceptive persons and are visionaries. So they identify a problem, a social problem in this case, that they can solve, but that doesn't mean that the beneficiaries of that venture, for example, realize that that problem is a real problem, right? So, for example, in my case, when I try to project the services of the co-working space to some people, and I say, now you're going to have a space where to relate with others, where to create community, they don't realize this is valuable. But if I would tell them, if you come to this co-working space, you're going to become millionaire in 3 months, everybody comes, right? So what I'm trying to say is that the way or let's say, the problem that we want to solve needs to be connected with a perceived need of the market, and that perceived need needs to be recognized as as a high priority. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So, yeah, finding the right business model to begin
Okay.
with.
And what are the challenges? I mean, when it comes, you live in a small town in Slovenia. I mean, Slovenia is obviously a lot closer to Europe geographically than we are, but we have the same past of transitioning from a communist regime to a capitalist economy. What are the biggest challenges you have when it comes to promoting this idea of entrepreneurship in Murska Sobota in Slovenia?
Yeah, well, first of all, the people doesn't understand what entrepreneurship is. They don't care. They care about having a job and growing as persons. So that was something that I needed to find. The other thing is that there's not enough people. So if the success of your co-working space depends on the amount of members that you have, then your co-working space is not going to succeed, because there's not enough people in the town. So we are not, we are a member of 15 persons here.
Yeah.
Right? So, and realizing that that's a competitive advantage that we have is amazing. We are one of the few co-working spaces that survived, right? A lot of co-working spaces closed in the past few years. So, and it is just because we are not focusing on the metrics that everybody wants to measure. The market is very small. That's one problem, right? But everybody knows that each time there are more persons trying to become independent and freelancing, and more and more people decide to go out of the corporate world and try to do something by themselves. So I think that this is just a great opportunity. Otherwise, culturally, Slovenian people is very entrepreneurial. They love quality of life. Job or working for them is second priority. First priority is having a good life. And so that was important to understand. So for you Armenians, it's harder to identify how your culture works. But you have foreigners there, so ask them, how do you perceive our culture? So that you can try to identify clearly what's the operating system of the place where you live. Slovenians have a concept that Slovenia is too small. So it's kind of a complex of inferiority, I would say. And I perceived something similar when I went there to visit Yerevan. So the recognition that you're a small country and not very developed yet, etc., etc. In many cases, that transforms into a fear and a limitation. But actually, when you see that your people is entrepreneurial that they love doing things with good quality, that they love to cooperate with others, that they are very open to foreigners and different cultures. Then you start watching that there are a lot of possibilities and strengths among you. And that is something that I found here in Slovenia, and that with my short experience visiting your beautiful country, I found that entrepreneurship is all around. Even in the waiters in the restaurants, trying to speak in English, learning English, etc. So yeah, I think that you have a wonderful place where to start any kind of activity. And you know, having a small market or having the problem of low salaries and the minimum salary that is too low, etc. That can be seen as a problem, but that is also part of your reality. And I would really challenge you to try to see at this point, how is that a competitive advantage?
Okay, very interesting. And I think it's interesting because Armenia is actually slightly bigger than Slovenia. It's not often that we get to talk to someone from a country that's smaller than Armenia. So it's good that we have that thing to feel good about today. Questions in the audience? One more question on my mind, and hopefully we'll have one more question from the audience as well before we finish today, is this idea in Armenia, I don't know if you have this in Slovenia, that we wait sometimes for our problems to be solved by the government or by somebody else. And this is maybe something that is common to our part of the world, so maybe in Slovenia as well. How do you try to overcome this? How do you try to promote this concept that you can solve your problems yourself rather than wait for the government to solve your problems? What can we do in Armenia, perhaps, that will push forward this idea a bit more?
Yeah. So I always remember when I met my wife, we were very much in love, and we were traveling with a group of people, and of course she wanted to be in the same room with me, and she would almost kill everybody else if that would not happen. So what the hell was that? Why was she so interested in going against what everybody wanted to do, and she wanted to get what she wanted to do? That's called initiative, and that initiative comes from doing something that you want to do. Initiative is the #1 characteristic of a successful, independent person in any field of action. If you don't have initiative and you are trying to become a social entrepreneur, think twice. You better don't do it until you identify what is that thing that motivates you to fight against everything else. If you talk with a successful IT company and you ask them, what is the one thing that your company measures to hire people? Many companies will tell you that the #1 characteristic they are looking for in a person is initiative. So how do you develop your ability to take initiative and ownership? You will have to ask yourself, why don't you do it? So why do you think you have no initiative? Why do you think you're waiting for others to solve your problem? And you are going to find out that you are hiding yourself on a fear. And this fear is, I have no power to make any change in a system that is so big and complicated. But then when you start reading or researching successful entrepreneurs or leaders of any kind, you are going to find out that they started in very humble situations like the majority of us. And their action, their little action, their first action began kind of a process, a snowball effect that is very difficult to end. In my experience with social entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general, they are telling me after a few years that we know each other, they always tell me, I could not get a job never again. I'm so much independent today that it is impossible for someone to hire me. I'm not anymore the kind of person that would accept blindly the orders of someone else. So you need to start with the first step. And that first step is discovering why you think you are not powerful enough, like to make change.
Okay, thank you very much. Anharser, any other questions in the audience? There is one question. The question, go ahead. One question from another Gohar in the audience.
If I want to find the partners in your country, can I use your space?
Yes. Of course.
And how can I members of the club or space?
I couldn't hear that question. How what?
How can I know who are the members of your space and with whom I can make the communication?
Yeah, what you can do is just send me a message. My colleagues there are going to share my contact information. I will send you an email. You just reply me with what are you doing and which kind of partnership you want to achieve. And I will connect you not only with members from here, but with other organizations that I know here that could be compatible with your request.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, it looks like we have no more questions. Thank you very, very much for your time, Jose. It was very interesting.
I would like to say something else that is something that went out of the radar if we have some time.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Yes, so the most amazing thing about Aurora Coworking is not the business model that we achieved. It's not nothing of that. What we talked, no. The most important thing of Aurora Coworking is that we achieved to work as a cooperative. So, and that is an idea that I believe is essential and very important in Armenia as well. So, how do you do to have an office space for you and two or three or four persons more? Or how are you going to solve buying equipment that you need for making your business function if you don't have enough money? How are you going to solve infrastructure issues that you need in order to deliver the services and products of your social enterprise? So I really invite you to revise and to think about the cooperative model, because the cooperative model is going to help you distribute the expenses, the costs, so that each one of the participating members will pay less. The members of Aurora Coworking started by paying 60 euros per month. With 60 euros per month, we were not covering our monthly expenses. I had to pay what was missing. Today, exactly today, I sent invoices for the past month. In the winter is starting here, so the heating expenses are starting to go high, right? And they paid 35 euros per member, and that covers all the expenses. So they managed to diminish the expense of running the whole co-working space to half. So how a cooperative system could help you cooperate with others and share expenses, I think that is such a simple idea that is so powerful and not used, that I would really like you to have it as one of the first things to evaluate when you are thinking about your future social entrepreneurial venture. And that works for many other things, not only for making business.
Absolutely. And as you know, it was the cooperative model that initially attracted us to you and made us want to involve you in our project as well. And once again, there are more details about that in the PDF. So I'll make sure that our participants get a good look at that as well. Are there any other questions that came up in the meantime? No. Thank you very, very much for your time, Jose, and for that wonderful presentation, not just of Aurora, but of your experience in this area. We appreciate it very much. And we're glad you're still connected to Armenia after your trip here.
Oh man, I'm missing so much to go to Armenia. I love the food so much and the people there. It is just amazing.
And because Armenia is so small, I mean, Armenia, at least you get a little more space.
Yeah, and actually I love the mountains around there. I found the origins of the religion that I was brought. I mean, I grew up being a Catholic, and Armenia let me know why the Catholic world is so fucked up. And I really love your country. It's a place of reflection. It's a place of finding amazing people. It's a multicultural space that I enjoyed very, very much. And I really hope to go there as soon as possible. This year I went there twice. I even got a message from the person that operates the elevator there in the Impact Hub. and I'm so happy of these kind of things. And I would like to extend the same kind of invitation to each one of you. If you have a question, if you have a doubt, if you would like to partner with someone here around, or just to say hi, please feel comfortable to reach me out. I'm not a big successful person that has no time. Basically, I thrive with others. So if I can be of support on any kind, just reach me out. So ask my colleagues there in the Impact Hub to share my contact information. Okay, and you can friend me in Facebook, whatever you want. I'm always available.
Thank you very much. Let's pop into the camera and say thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome in Armenia anytime.
Thanks.